Where should we put this?
Yeah. I don't know, I'm taking some
plans.
just a little. Hang on just a second. Gotcha.
This is my kind of my lead into a little mural talk here, because you have some of the only murals in the Anacortes Mural Project that are not in Anacortes. We got Bobby Holloway, which I'm sure you've all seen down at the store, in real good shape. He had to be repainted. When we originally did that, Bobby was still alive. He was dying of cancer. He'd lost his ponytail. But some of his friends at the bar, he was a bartender at the harbor. They called him Bogwon Bobby there. And he lived over here in the little farm Phil McCracken had, and had a few really good parties there. But anyway, his friends had me paint that from a picture that they had, but I had jerry rig it a little bit. And he's got a little garden spade in his hand, and that's to signify his gardening expertise. There's also a band of Grateful Dead roses and marijuana leaves on his hat band. And if you look closely, he's got something in his hand that looks like a hand-rolled cigarette of sorts. He's also got Mexican tire tread sandals, if you ever noticed the cord in the sole of sandals. Also down at the store is Charlie Gant. Charlie Gant had a newspaper on this island. He was kind of the poet laureate of this whole region. He used to write flowery poetry about where we live. I mean, you can't help yourself. But he had the Guimas Telcom and Guimas Beachcomber from 1912, I think it was, 1923. Does that sound about right? It's written just below his vest across his waist. I've been putting the story on all of the murals. As a matter of fact, I just added some story of my grandfather here. On his shirt it says, Wild Bill Beesner had a Harley, 2 Indians, and a Henderson 4, went off Chuckanut Drive and also into the Skagit River. A little more about that later. To get back to Charlie Gant, got to hand it to you guys. He has been alongside that ramp for 12 years, and there's not even a fingerprint. We just buffed the patina off him today, and that's the first thing we have done to that mural in the 12 years it's been up. So congratulations, Queen of Sodom. Flora Mangus, on the other hand, on Log Cabin, was put up last year, and we just buffed her off. Somebody had been throwing little mud balls at her. And I'm not too happy about that, because in all the murals I've done a few pretty girls, including that one up there with my grandfather. That's Bill Beesner sticking out of the wheelhouse of the Capri. He used to run it for Apex Fisheries. Or no, he was running for Loman at the time. And I have done murals of both of those, and they're inside. There are only 3 murals that are inside the mural project. The dragon at the library, and these 2 at the Anacortes Museum. And she's standing up right by the opening where you look into the cannery display. And he's mounted with a couple of L brackets and bent out, so it looks like he's leaning on the post. It just worked out really well. So they're in real good shape. But anyway, get back to Charlie Gant. Keep diverting himself. I don't know if you guys know this, but Charlie Gant organized a fight on Green Asylum, right about where the store is. And he had brought in some well-known boxer to take on any of the local toughs. And my grandfather said that the toughest guy on the island got in the ring with this guy. And the pro hit him good. I don't know whether it knocked him down or not, but hit him good enough that the guy suddenly realized that he was out of his league. And he ran and he jumped over the rope and started running across the field. And when everybody realized what was going on, the whole crowd jumped up and ran after him. The fight lasted out one punch. My grandfather also said that Charlie Gant always came back from Anacortes drunk and broke. So Charlie Gant hardly ever paid for a ferry ride. But anyway, some of the characters that from this island, including everybody's favorite, Henrietta Blaisdell Finley. Some people call her One Bubble. I'm sorry, I don't. It's tattooed on my arm. She was Bubbles from the time she was like 3 years old until she got old and ornery and decided to change it just to screw with people. It really messed up everything. And as I've said, if you become a living legend, you don't have the right to go and mess up the book, because if Wild Bill got married at the end of his life and suddenly decided he wasn't going to be Wild Bill anymore, he was going to be Mild Bill, how do you write the damn book? You know, what do you call it? So I'm sticking with Bubbles. And this particular picture we've got right here of her standing in her Ming Toy outfit. Her stint as Ming Toy Oriental Dancer and Magician's assistant is what made her legend. But that only lasted March and April of 1927. It was only 2 months that they performed in Stanwood, Mount Vernon, Burlington, Cedar Woolley, Concrete, and then they played Anacortes. By this time, they were pretty good. And they had auditioned for Pantages. We had a whole string of theaters all over the country, and they were going to hit the big time. And they were good. Her partner, Laverne, the magician, was actually Bob Cronquist. He was a professional sign painter from the time he was like 15 years old. I've seen pictures of 2 of his vehicles. Beautiful, beautiful painting on the side, the leather and stuff. I've seen a whole collection of his signbooks. I mean, big billboards. And he was just really good. As a matter of fact, I think she learned quite a bit from him. His logo was a Hawaiian girl kneeling, and Bubbles did a lot of silhouetted mermaids. They went up her stairs in her second house into the bathroom. She painted these silhouettes all over Salt Lake Hot Springs on down the peninsula. She was very prolific. She was a great cartoonist. Like I say, I've got a couple of her works. I've got the Ming Toy down here, and I've got the nude up here with a plate of skulls. She actually did that one twice, just tracing it over the first one, because one of them, the head was all wrong. I mean, the head, that plate of skulls just didn't add up to the body was great. The other one, the head was great, the plate of skulls were good. So I just took the 2 of them, they were the same exact size, and I just took an X-Acto knife and went zip, cut the head and plate of skulls straight across there, put the good head and skull on top of the great body, and that's what's tattooed on my arm. Bubbles down. I'm going to show it to you right now because I'm comfortable in this old leather jacket. I'll get to that in a minute. So anyway, we're currently working on Banjo Eddie. And for years now, I've been saying, you know, in the mural business, I'd start on a sponsorship with a $500 flat rate for a person. I'd take off $100 if I knew them. I'd add $100 if I had to do what I call Frankenstein work, where I got to lengthen one leg and shorten the other and lop off an arm and twist this around and do a whole, I've done whole head transplants. Just put the right head on a different body and you're all done. Matter of fact, that's both the basketball player down there off the port dock and the guy standing in the freestanding in the yard at the museum, what's his name, Havocost. His body actually came from a picture of a guy standing in front of the store over here on Queens. So anyway, but the joke was that, you know, I also had $100 if they were holding a fish or a banjo. And fish are actually easier than banjos to do, and I've already done a banjo for Rudy Mallon. He was the banjo king, wore out 24 banjos in his career. And so he's down on the Eagles, and holding up pretty well. I met the guy, he's what a character. But anyway, we're going to do Eddie, and this is what we call a done plug. Tom, if you could go and turn that around and show people the back of that real quick. The murals are made out of 3/4 inch MDO. The MDO stands for medium density overlay. But the stuff we're getting now is more like HDO, high density overlay. Notice this gray back on the thing? Okay, we put 1 coat of primer, 2 coats of acrylic latex, front and back. And this has got the paper. The overlay is the paper that they press in when they're making the plywood. And this keeps all of that wood grain and stuff out of the picture. That's why these things last like they do. And so, yeah, you can turn it back around. And notice how glossy it is when like I say, it's got 1 coat of primer, 2 coats of acrylic latex put on with a foam roller, so it gives a little bit of a pebble texture. But when Terry puts the back on this thing, he just slathers that floor and deck enamel on there, and it comes out just glossy. That if moisture gets behind there, it's not going to last from the back. But 3/4 inch, you project this thing on the plywood, and you can get 2 people and 3 gorillas out of a single sheet. We're doing little bobos, we got a whole bunch of them and so forth. But anyway, you cut the darn thing, you project it first with an overhead projector, you draw it all out. I draw a cut line so it's easy to follow how to cut it. And then you cut it out with an electric jigsaw, run a router around it, except for some places where you don't want to have a router. You leave those square, you carve so that they mesh. You putty the holes if there are any, and then you put a coat of acrylic it's 2-part epoxy, a cold cure epoxy around the edges, and that glues everything in on the edges. And then 2 coats of this heavy, it's just acrylic latex, but you keep it in a jar that doesn't seal very well, so it gets really thick, and it's like putting on thin putty. You put 2 layers of that over the thing, and then it's ready to paint. Once you get 2 coats of this acrylic latex, one-shot enamel on these things, this stuff is really impervious to, I mean, you bury it in the desert and it'll come out just crisp and clean. If you put it in the Louvre, you know, it's out of the weather. But we stick them out in the general public where they're in a little danger. We recently had all the faces on Smuggler Kelly, the guy that caught him, the bodyguard for Sid Chi, his wife, his little girl, his son, the lady, and the baby. 10 faces with a knife. Just walked right down the street and just, and we just found today, this was the poster that was in the waiting room on the other side. My buddy stole it just since we were coming over here, we figured, and that's got an X across it, and somebody put thumbtacks in my eyeballs. So it might be somebody that lives over here, who knows? Keep your eye peeled. If you hear any grumbling about those goddamn murals and stuff, just let me know. I'd like to find these guys. Yes, Red?
Where's Banjo going to be living?
Well, I like the idea of him living at the old Gilkey store where he lived, but someone also mentioned that once we get the bandstand up here all finished off and everything, that might be a good place for him.
I think he'll temporarily be, kind of putting it together with Mike McGinnis, and he temporarily could be at the McGinnis store until we're ready with the bandstand placement.
Okay,
That's
sure,
the
sure.
thought.
Jeff has been the lead on this. He's the one that's been making this happen. And he helped get those murals over today, as a matter of fact. And he got me in the Buick over here too. Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it. So, anyway, we're working at the same time on Bobby Churchman. I don't know how many of you know Bobby. Drove an old beat-up yellow Ford truck and, you know, helped out the Seroptimus, Naquanis, and mowed yards, and just a general handyman.
What's the last name again?
Churchman. It's actually T-J-E, gosh, I don't remember. It's an Indian name. But anyway, I first met Bobby in 1965. He and his brother were living in a garage just before you get to that store where you turn off to Alt Field. And he used to buy beer for us kids. And in this garage, he had shelves all the way around, and they were all covered with old-timey radios that he had gotten working. He found them in the garbage dump. He'd take them home and get them all running. Every one of them ran. Quite a guy. I like Bobby. But so we're doing Eddie and Bobby at the same time, and hopefully Bobby is going to go down on the side of what used to be the harbor, along with Uncle Bob Petrich and Bill Adams, two guys that used to frequent there. I'm sure they were all friends. Bill Wells is also on that street, so it'll, on the map, on the mural map, it'll be Bill, Uncle Bob, Bill, and Bobby. And I'm a William Robert Mitchell, so I've got them both. But, you know, salt of the earth, Bills and Bobs. Anyhow, so this mural is probably going to start getting painted tomorrow, because they're doing a little documentary about the mural project sponsored by the museum. And they've got my friend Terry and me projecting this, cutting, routing, carving, sanding, putty, yeah, all of the steps. All we got to do now is show them how to paint the darn things, and you know, anybody can do it. 'Cause, I don't know if you guys know this, but I am a really lazy artist. I try not to mix more than 2 colors at a time, because then it becomes complicated and you can't redo it. All these faces, the reason they're this color is because that is simply medium brown for the darkest colors, and then just add white until you know, and the secret to all of this stuff is dark colors recede, so put them around the edges, light colors stick out, so make sure to put a little extra white light color on the nose, you know. It's that simple, and when I'm painting these things, I try to get like the pants or something all one color, and then just come in with the shadow, with, you know, with a little bit darker, come in with a highlight. And when I'm putting in highlights, especially on the wrinkles on arms, this is about the only time I really get to have fun on a mural, because everything's got to be done by the book or it's not going to turn out right. But when I get into the wrinkles and stuff, I get to go wild with my big brush. That's the fun part. I really enjoy the wrinkles on stuff. And as a matter of fact, it's wrinkles on stuff. You may not know this, but one of the reasons there are so many nudes is because wrinkles are so hard to do. Well, you know, I mean, it's a lot easier to do nudes. So. But nudes is part of what got me into art. When I was about 13 years old, I realized that art was where all the naked women hung out. And I said, gee, if I can get a job in this field, that would be great. You know, so, yeah, that was part of it. And my grandmother helped out. She gave me a book of, you know, classical nude art. She also gave me another book, one of those Hal Foster books, How To, and it was all done by Elfgren, one of the most famous pinup artists ever. And I never got that good, but I think the best woman I've ever done, other than this gal that's in the museum, so I won down in the log cabin. She is my Mona Lisa. That gal with the hat, you know, Flora is just about my favorite pretty girl I've ever painted. Though I've got one that comes real close. That they took down the Dorsey grocery truck on the Anchor Inn. Everybody knows where the Anchor Inn is? Okay. And it's like 14 feet long, I think. It's three big panels, and it's got Dorsey and his wife, Marguerite, standing there. And she's in a maroon dress with red highlights and stuff. And I had to repaint her. Well, my buddy Terry and I repainted the whole thing. And when I repainted her, her dress turned out way better than the first time. Her face looks much better than last time. And I put ruby slippers on it. You'll have to notice that. I think they really turned out great. But you see this picture of the steamer over here. This is one that we just recently finished and put back up where it originally was by, it used to be Island Rental, now it's Diamond Rental on 27th Street, just 2 blocks from me. It's freestanding, and so it made it a rather complicated, plus it was a really old one. The picture is the paving of Commercial Avenue in 1913, the first time it got paved. And it was an original photograph my grandmother left me, and so I thought, did a little research, and you don't see a lot of steamroller art. You don't see a lot of pictures of steamroller period. And so it's a little hard to do the research on some of the machinery, so it's a little bit vague. But it goes all the way to black, and we were doing that originally. Frank and Bill McCracken on their horses who originally went all the way to black. Several of the other ones did too, including the Dorsey grocery truck. I took it back away from black on that one. And that was because originally we were basing these on drawings that I had done, tracings of the picture, and where I had a shadow, I just went to black. As a matter of fact, as someone once said, this was in cartooning, I did cartooning for a while, said, never ever stipple if you can hatch, meaning cross hatching. Never ever stipple if you can hatch, better yet, use black. That was an old cartooning thing. But anyway, so all this mural stuff has been preoccupying me for 35 years almost. Next May it'll be 35 years I've been working on this. Next April I'll be 70, so it's coming up on half my life I've been doing this. And this will be probably the thing I'm known for, despite the fact that I was a poet when I was young, and I was a cartoonist when I was a little bit older. Then I designed a totem pole and helped a tribe become a tribe, which is such a joke. When I went in to meet the Samish Indians, Ken Hansen, the biggest Indian I ever saw, and his little teeny mother were the only people in the room that looked like Indians. The rest of them looked just like you guys. It's kind of a, yeah, I won't say any more about that. But anyway, so let's see, I was gonna drift from from murals to motorcycles. That's Grappa. That's a 1908 Indian motorcycle. I went through a stack of In the Wind and Easy Rider magazines this high, cutting out every picture I could find of Indians, so that I put together this big collage that had all these details of the engines and stuff. I wanted to be so accurate on the thing. And then when I painted the engine, I had to put the spark plugs on the wrong side so you could see the darn things. All that research just out the window. Yeah, it's artistic license. See, I got my artistic license a long time ago. I'm a paid up member, you know. If I want to do it this way, I'm going to do it that way, you know, just because it works. That's part of this being a lazy artist and stuff. You know, I try not to overwork it. You know, just try to bang this stuff out. It took me a month to detail this originally, and when we get done with this is going to be better than it was originally, because originally the color of that bike was bright red, and now it's fire red. It's a much brighter bike. But I got my first motorcycle over here on Guimas Island. Does anybody here remember Chuck Brown or Rita Brown? Okay, yeah. Chuck's a tall guy, his mother, kind of grumpy old gal. But he had a 1957 Cushman Eagle. It was kind of turquoise blue. It was long, it was low because it had these little wheels, you know, they're only about yay big, like little trailer wheels. And it had a shifter on the side of the gas tank. So it had a foot clutch and 2 speeds and no reverse. Big pedals for your feet. It was wide, and it wasn't terribly fast, and it didn't jump very well. We dug a hole back out in the baseball field there for a long, and took all the dirt and made a ramp on the other end. So you went into this hole and then it came flying off this thing. Only fly 6 or 7 feet or something like that, and then it generally crunched down and then slide sideways, and the thing was so wide it wouldn't fall over. But we had a lot of fun with it. My brother took it to Oak Harbor one time. But my grandfather helped me finance the thing. It was $150, and he was teaching us bookkeeping. We did lawns for my grandfather. He had the place on North Beach, which he had to mow the bottom, the hill, the back. It was big. Plus he had his place in Anacortes and the place next door, and my great-grandfather's house, and my other great-grandfather's house, and our house. So just in the family, we had a bunch of yards, and it was mostly between me and my brother. And so Grandpa kind of helped finance the thing, and then we paid him off and kept the books on this whole thing. And we didn't have it for very long and realized this thing needed an overhaul. So Grandpa put it in the back of his Jeep, and we took it up to the Harley shop in Bellingham that he had been doing business with back when he had this motorcycle. And it was on those trips up to Bellingham with this Cushman, he told us a couple of stories. And when he told me that he had 2 Indians, a Harley and a Henderson Ford, he said that they always had 2 motorcycles because one of them was always in the shop. And I think it was coming back from Bellingham on Chuckanut Drive, he told us how he missed a turn one time and went over the cliff. I said, well, Grandpa, you know, they probably wouldn't be in the shop if you didn't take them off at Chuckanut Drive. And a little later on down the road, he told us that, yeah, he was a little drunk one time, headed for a dance down Fur Island someplace, and he missed the bridge on the North Fork of the Skagit River and put the thing in the river. Never got that one back. But this is about the time. This was, I believe, before he got his first car in 1911. He would have been 20 years old at that time, and bought it brand new, paid cash for it. And there's a mural of a 1911 Ford Model T Torpedo, which very coincidentally, I had gone through a lot of Anacortes Americans doing research over the years, and I only found one ad for Napa Ronneberger Ford on 6th Street that had pictures of Fords. And here is a picture of a 1911 Model T Torpedo, just like Grandpa's car with a zigzag windshield. It kind of comes back like that, big open cockpit on it. And just coincidentally, it was April 28th, 1911, my grandfather's 20th birthday. And I wonder if he got that car for his birthday. But there's a mural of my grandfather sitting on his other Model T, which he converted into a Bug. Bug is short for buggy. And it's down on 3rd Street, and he bent the body for the thing to make that shape down at the Guaymas Ferry Dock when he worked down there. It was probably in the early 20s when he did that. My brother Paul told me that my grandmother had been warned about my grandfather by many of her friends, but she got involved with him anyway. His friends called him Wolf, and I suspect, I don't know why, but he's told me some stories. If I repeat any of the stories that you've already heard, somebody will let me know, because I don't want to repeat myself. But I got to tell you one story. If I didn't tell it before, if I did, somebody stop me. But I think it was Bill Loman told me that he and my grandfather and Bill Gilkey, 3 Bills, were headed down to, I think it was the Billy Burnett, a little tugboat that my grandfather owned with Bill Gilkey. Cleaned up log spill up by Point Francis, and in one weekend made enough money to pay for the boat. First time I remember coming to Guaymas, we came on the Billy Burnett, and he just ran it up on North Beach, and we all jumped off onto the sand, and he backed it up and anchored it up. But anyway, they were headed down the boat, and there was a plank going across to the boat. My grandfather was in the lead with the flashlight, and he missed a step, and he just went plunk right off the end of the water next to the boat. And they saw him go down, the flashlight was still on, and the flashlight kind of wiggled around a little bit down there, and then started moving towards the shore. And Grab couldn't swim a stroke. As a matter of fact, that I believe that's the reason he hired Steve Orsini to teach me and my brother Paul how to swim. Thank you, Steve. Came in handy a couple of times.
Yeah.
But that one time when I took Paul to the Big Island and marooned him there for 10 years, we went down to the beach and Paul fell asleep up on the beach while I kind of fell asleep down on the edge of the water. And the tide came in. When Paul woke up, I was floating out to sea with nothing but my nose sticking out of the water. He could barely see me. I try to write a will before I go see my brother in Hawaii. Needless to say. Next time I went over there, I was out in a kayak, and my nephew Aaron decided, he was in the water, it wasn't very deep, 5 feet or something. He pushed on my kayak and his kayak, trying to put his ass up on his kayak. He just flipped me completely over, and there were straps over my knees, and he pretty quickly got me flipped back upright, and I'm still sitting on this thing. My hat is floating away, still got my sunglasses on, still got my pipe clenched in my teeth. Of course it was out, but yeah, like I said, I always got to write a will before I go see my brother. But anyway, to get back to motorcycles, the reason my grandfather started out on motorcycles was because back in the day, roads were so bad, just ruts and whatnot. The motorcycle, you could go zipping down the middle, the wagon tracks that covered the county here. And I'll bet you anything that my grandfather had his motorcycle over here on Guimas Island, one of them anyway, because his Uncle Matt had built a little boat called the Dixie, and they used to ferry cattle from the ranch over by Samish Island over to the ranch here, that little valley down there past Beals. And I'll bet you anything Grandpa loaded that motorcycle into the Dixie and brought it over here and tore up Guimas Island at one time. I know I certainly tore up Guimas Island. It kind of tore me up too. First motorcycle wreck I was ever in was over here. I think I'm almost certain I told you guys this story. When Gary Veal turned in front of me and I kind of clipped him and did a little somersault over by Lewis's on North Beach, and ended up smack on the white line with my motorcycle laying across my chest, which generally keeps you pinned down until somebody picks the motorcycle up off you. And I lost both my knees, both my elbows, the outside of my ankles, four deals for my knuckles on both hands, and my upper lip. I was wearing my helmet, so I did not grind my nose off, but I hit on my face. I hit right here and then, snapped my head back, got the chin guard on my helmet. Thank God I was wearing a helmet. Don't ever ride motorcycles wearing shorts and t-shirts. That's surefire way for road rash. I've had this old leather jacket for a very long time. I sold it to a friend of mine at one point, and he gave it back to me 20 years later, and he said, since I bought this motorcycle jacket from you, I have owned 120 motorcycles, and I've ridden each and every one of them with it, and I'm going to get off motorcycles before I get killed. I figured the only way to do it is get rid of this goddamn jacket. So, gave it back to me. And I've gotten my use out. My first black leather jacket, though, I bought at Brown Brothers for $50, and it fit me like a glove. This one's pretty bulky. I used to be able to put my books when I was commuting to Steady Valley. As a matter of fact, this kind of leads into marriage a little bit, but maybe I should stall on that until I get some more motorcycle out. By the way, a show of hands. How many people here have ridden on a motorcycle? Whoa! Looks like just about everybody knows what I'm just about to tell you about motorcycles. There's something magic about motorcycles. I think I know what it is. It's that leaning over and defying gravity that is such a thrill. Because if you were standing still, you just fall on your head, you know. It's just, there's something about it. And that Cushman didn't quite do it for me. When I turned 16, we sold the Cushman to Hal Peterson. Anybody here know Hal? I know a bunch of you know Hal. Yeah. And when I turned 16, I had $300 saved up, and I could afford either a Honda Super 90, just come out, had a teardrop tank that was backwards, pointing in the front instead of the back. It was kind of goofy, but it was modern, and it was a pretty nice little bike. Or I could afford a Ducati 125, single cylinder, just throaty, but they were wide, they were low, they didn't turn as well. And I would have had to deal with hotkeys. They had the Ducati dealership up by the airport. And also dealt with Nortons and some of the English stuff. But anyway, my grandfather decided to kind of chip in, and he matched my $300 and $600. I could buy a brand new, only brand new vehicle I've ever owned in my life. Brand new Honda 160, just coming out. They called it the Baby Super Honda. It had 2 cylinders. It was high enough that it just leaned way over there. It's light enough that you could take it on trails, even with the exhaust being down low instead of like scrambled pipes. Oh, it was a nice little bike. It had the first bike with electric start. And that was handy when you stalled out on a hill like this. You didn't want to roll backwards until you found a flat spot so you could kick it. That was, it was a dandy little bike. But I had a little trouble with the law. Lost my license for about 2 months, got it back for another 2 months, and I was trying to outrun Pete Dragovich, the chief of police in downtown Anacortes. He came around the corner and he was headed right straight for me, and I didn't have much choice but to stop. Got a reckless driving ticket, took away my license for 6 months. Grandpa locked my bike up in his garage down there on 8th Street, and we put Marvel Mystery Oil in the cylinder so everything would be great, and just left it locked up. That's when I learned to hitchhike. I was going to Oak Harbor a lot, and but I really missed my motorcycle. Once I got my driver's license back, sold that bike, and I only got $300 out of it. I only had the thing for less than a year. Only had probably 4,000 miles on it, maybe. And it was when Frank Marriott had already bought it back from me. He told me that it was 1 in 1,000 that comes from Japan, running like a domestic. The domestic is the really good ones that came off the line in Japan. They kept in Japan. They said it was the crap. So I know, it was a real slick little motorcycle. Then I bought a Honda 150 from my friend Dennis Hilsinger for $150. He had kind of run the guts out of it. He got it new, and within 3 months, he had put 2,000 miles on and wrecked the thing. So he had it all torn apart, sold it to me for $150. I took it home in one afternoon. I put the whole darn thing together and took it down to Marriott's. They put a valve job on it. It was perfect. So I had this great little motorcycle. And I'm coming up on getting married. Here's where marriage comes in. Coming up on getting married. And I was planning on getting married in this very church. Grabbed a whole bunch of decorations from Christmas over here at the hall, decorated the whole place, borrowed some candlesticks from Phil McCracken, and it looked really nice and everything. And on Christmas Day, I was zipping up 12th Street on my red Honda 150, headlight on just like I'm supposed to, that was the law, had my helmet on, and some guy pulls out right smack. I just passed the fire chief in his red 55 Chevy going up the hill. He was going too slow, so I passed him. And this guy pulls right out at K Avenue, right smack in front of me. And I have got a split second to realize that if I try to turn onto K Avenue like this, the guy that pulled up the stop sign right behind this guy, I'm going to dump this thing and I'm going to slide underneath this second car. So I just clamped on the binders and gritted my teeth, hit him dead center, punched in both his doors with my knees, and went over the top of the car. Turned out the guy's name was Chris Nelson, but he was Norwegian. It's spelled C-H-R-I-S-T. Okay, so I literally T-boned Christ on Christmas. Literally. Smashed that motorcycle flat as a pancake right up to the headlight. Punched the fenders into the little bolts for the exhaust. It was a mess. And I was getting married in about 5 days. And so I got married here at this little church, and I was gonna send these around. I just got these, my actual pictures kind of disappeared, and I haven't been able to find them. But here, if you want to pass these around, there's a picture of me walking down the aisle after just getting married. The last thing I said in a clear voice was, I do. My laryngitis kicked in immediately thereafter, and I just squeaked out the rest of anything I had to say at that thing. There's a picture of me going down the aisle. There's a picture of me, my mother, and Jim Thomas, who lived over here on Guimas. He was my stepdad. And then there's a picture of me and Beth and my Super Hawk, 305 Super Hawk. Marriott's gave me $150 for the motorcycle that I paid $150 for and then smashed flat. And towards this Super Hawk, another couple of $100, and I had a 305 Super Hawk. And the thing was gutless compared to my little 160. It was 550 pounds of not enough power. It only do like 85 or 90 miles an hour on a hill. And I could do that with the 160, and it leaned over better. But I had to commute with that Super Hawk from North Beach at Guimas Island to Skagit Valley College. I had an 8 o'clock class, so I'd catch that 7 o'clock ferry. And of course, I was just blowing across this island full open. Matter of fact, I was blowing across the island full open one time trying to take Kirk Great out of the ferry. And at the LaRue Brothers little ranch, a whole herd of chickens were out on the road. And there was no slowing down, or we're gonna miss the ferry, and so I just took the white line and went through the middle and said, okay, take your chances. I got one of them on my foot, and it dropped off, and so after I dropped Kirk off, I came back and apologized to the LaRue Brothers, told them I'd pay for the chicken. He said, no, you just helped us decide which one was going in the pot.
Martin and Tillman.
Yeah, exactly. So that worked out okay. But I got hit by a deer when I was on a motorcycle. Steve Dunn had a party at his place, and he had to hire a ferry to get the beer back over here because earlier in the day he had been hit by a deer. He had a 305 Super Hawk just like mine, but he had different pipes. And a deer had jumped off the trail right by where you go down to his house on West Beach, hit him in the side, knocked him over, killed the deer. And we were in the middle of the party, and me and all of my buddies were kind of drunk. I said, Steve, what'd you do with that deer? And he said, it's still laying up in the ditch. And I said, well, hell, let's go get it. Then clean it out. So we all got together and got a truck and went over, got this deer, hung it up at our house on North Beach, gutted the thing into a wheelbarrow, headed back to the party on the very same Super Hawk, Steve's, and at the very same spot, I'm on the back, deer comes out, smacks us in the side, didn't tip us over and stuff. This thing is laying in the ditch flopping around. I figured it had broken its neck, not realizing it's not flopping around if it's got a broken neck. But the only thing I had was a pocket knife, so I jumped on it with a pocket knife. Suddenly there was a second deer hanging up in the breezeway. That's when Rita Brown walked by. Saw these two deer looking like a couple of vampire bats all propped open and everything in the breezeway of the Beezer place. Thought, okay, well, we're not going to get away with this. We might have been able to eat one deer, but we're not going to be able to eat 2 deer. So we called the department of, those guys. And they came over and thanked us for, cleaning it and, taking care of it and stuff, because all the meat went over to northern state where Agnes Orsini worked. And, Steve, I love your mom. One time I was digging an agate out of the road right above your place there. Pocket knife snapped shut on my finger. I looked at it, it's cut to the bone, and I said, oh, better go see Mrs. Orsini. And she was home, bandaged up.
I have to say that, we remember specifically that wreck with the Cushman, because you came down to our house, but you turned out to be one of her biggest customers. And that first time, she didn't have any butterfly Band-Aids at home, but after that, she stocked butterfly Band-Aids specifically for you. And you used many of them up, as a matter of fact.
Well, I think, Steve, weren't you on that camping trip on north side of Jack Island when I ran off the cliff?
Yes,
Yeah,
it was amazing.
yeah. They had, the tide was out, we had the canoe, I think, and they paddled me back to North Beach and had to go get the wheelbarrow to get me across all the tide flats and stuff. And then had to haul me up the hill. And my mom had to drag me over to the doctor's office, and I had to piggyback on my mother's back to get into to see the doctor. Oh, yeah.
You were chasing Paul.
No, Paul was chasing me.
No, I thought you were chasing Paul. What I do
No,
remember.
Paul was chasing me. We had a fight over a can of peaches.
Yes, I remember.
I remember, I've said this for many years. A can of peaches is the only thing worth fighting for on a camping trip.
Yes. Well, you guys were fighting.
Oh, yeah.
You ran, he ran.
Well, no, he was down
turned
washing,
and
he was washing out a pan down below, and I lobbed a big rock and landed right next to him.
Yeah.
Splashed him, so he took the pan of water, ran up the cliff, and was trying to throw the pan of water on me.
Yeah.
And I was running around and just wasn't looking where I was going, and ran off the cliff.
That's right, you ran right off the
And
cliff.
it was, what, about 20 feet?
Probably about 18, well, 15 feet.
Yeah.
But the thing was, you landed on a rock, it was just a rock.
Yeah, it was
And,
slab of slate tipped back like this, and
Yeah.
I landed on my feet. It's a good thing it was tipped back like that, because it sprained both my ankles, but it didn't bruise my heels.
Right.
Like Paul did when he jumped out of the barn over down at the Beesner place. Yeah.
It was never easy camping with you guys. I want to say it was never easy.
Yeah. Well, you remember the time we were camped on the south side of Jack Island, and Paul took that one shot with his .22 back towards Guimas. And said, oh, I saw a seal. Oh, okay. Next day, we're paddling the canoe back, and we get a little ways from the shore, and Paul said, there's my seal, there's my seal. And he just kept it up, and we had to turn around and go back, and sure enough, on the bottom, not far from the shore, was a dead seal with a hole right through his eyeball and out the other side. And so we tied onto him, and we drug him home and got the wheelbarrow and wheeled him across the tide flats. And I skinned that thing. And the knives and the axe I used to chop off the head so we could bury it to get the skull were permanently oiled. Oh, and stink. Oh, Lord have mercy. I've worked in some dirty canneries and stuff, but Lord, if you ever can avoid skinning a seal, do. Oh, God. And I couldn't save the skin. It was beautiful. It was a, a harbor seal, so it had all the spots and everything. Beautiful fur and everything, but it's just so greasy. You couldn't get all the fat off the back of the thing, and it rotted. And it's weird, we buried the skull, and we were professional skull buriers. We knew how to find skulls. I once dug up a bat skull that was smaller than your little fingernail. I mean, if it was in your hand, it would have been over on the table. It was that small, and I found that. But we buried this thing under the apple tree. Whoa, got motorcycles attacking me. And could not find it the next year. It was like disappeared. It was very weird, very, very weird. Which one is that? Oh, that's the Ace. These motorcycle pictures behind me here were done for the cover of the Clam Digger. And these are big renditions. This is the size that they ran in the Clam Digger. He had the plates all made and everything, so he just ran off some cards for me. That was the first one I did. This one was Oyster for Claudia, being Claudia Ashback, because her son Lee Ashback is the notorious Limp Lee of the Banditos. He's the one that's got the oyster run coming to town. And this is one of the reasons why motorcycles are so appropriate right now, because 2 weeks hence, and they'll all be coming in Anacortes. And these ones here, I gotta point out a couple of these things. I didn't bring my swagger stick, so I can't point real well. But this one right here is a Harley Flathead, and my stepdad, Jim Thomas, lived on North Beach. I knew him before my mom met him, because he hired me and Paul to help clean out his garage so he could get his '57 Corvette in there. The garage was just heaped with trophies he'd won in drag races in California. I think Steve was in on this too, weren't you, Steve?
Yeah.
Yeah, we got it all organized and up on the shelf so he could get his car in there. Real nice guy. And he told me that he had one of these things, he had the thing bored out. He said, I'm not sure if I can believe it or not, he said at 90 miles an hour he had enough torque to be able to pull his front wheel. And he was driving across, I think it was Kansas, he lived out in the Midwest someplace. And he said he was doing 100 and something miles an hour, and there was a bit of a sand dune that had kind of crossed the road. When he hit that, the front wheel kind of stopped, and he went over the bars, and then the motorcycle came after him. And he said, after they had tangled for about 1/8 of a mile going down the road and stuff, he said by the time it stopped, I had given up motorcycles. So this one was labeled black and blue, and it says for Jim up there. That one was for Claudia, and this one was to help dispel a little rumor, because everybody thinks that Lawrence of Arabia was killed on a Vincent, and that's a Vincent, Black Shadow. Did 130 miles an hour in 1948, I think it was, just stock. And the engine was so big on that, it didn't even have a frame. They just bolted everything to the engine. The engine itself was the frame. But I did a little drawing of Lawrence up here, and on the back fender there in blue, I put that in 1935 it was a Burro Superior that had killed Lawrence. So just try to get that squared away. And this one right here was a picture that Greg Dutton gave me, the original. And I've taken this picture down to the Oyster Room several years in a row to show to various banditos. And we now have 5 of these guys identified. This is at Walla Walla. This is at the prison. And they had a chopper, and if you were good, you got to work in the shop on the chopper. And if you were real good, you got to ride it once a month. And it made a whole bunch of bad bikers pretty nice guys, because they all wanted to work in the shop, they all wanted to ride the bike. But the guy with the big beard and a big smile in the middle is George. Everybody seemed to know Bandito George. So he was kind of the middle of the whole thing. But we pinned it down that is somewhere between 1973 and 1978, based on the guys that we have known and when they served. So we kind of calculated, we got it down that close anyway. And this one right here, this is a cutaway view. We call them phantom view of the engine. We call it the Phantom Knucklehead. And this was in 2001. And when it says Oyster Run 01, I intentionally made the last part of the N look like a 1, so it's Oyster Run 101. Which is always the first class you get in college. But I think I did a pretty good job on it, but it's talking here about the fire rings on these things help keep the head gaskets from blowing out on this thing. And there's a little deal here and up here, make cooler heads prevail, gear down, have a good time. This was right after 9/11 in 2001. And when I was talking about the Phantom Knucklehead, I had my suspicions about that whole scenario at the time. And the cooler heads prevail, I was hoping that we'd be smart enough to turn the other cheek and remain the victims and not get into a big tangle in the Middle East. Didn't work out that way. So, anyway, that was my response to 9/11, and we even made it into shirts. Unfortunately, if you don't turn them inside out, this is what you get. So, remember to turn your shirts inside out when you wash them. So, anyway, we've covered motorcycles pretty well, but I wanted to say that I think it was motorcycles that got me married in the first place. Because, you know, I told you about losing the lip and everything. I went to that party that I was headed for, and that's when I met Beth. Was at that party, and I had a bandage across there, but my lip was swollen out past my nose. I got really drunk because I was in pain, and Helen Peterson threw me in the Rosario Straits, so I was soaking wet. And when Beth and I went for a walk on the beach, I'm soaking wet and look like a duck, and she still liked me. I thought, boy, this gal's special. So I ended up marrying her at this very church, and getting married over here and then going for your honeymoon in Everett is kind of a problem, because you gotta sit in line with all these people behind you honking and yelling. Somebody put shaving cream on the steering wheel, and that's my car. Yeah, it was, but we get down to Everett for our glorious 2 days of honeymoon in Everett, and I get the car stuck out in a muddy field, and I'm still wearing my getting married clothes. I don't want to get out. Thank God there were a bunch of motorcycle guys all covered in mud up playing in the field and stuff. They helped us get unstuck, and we went over and ate at the Rip Van Winkle Motel. I've seen the sign for years and always curious about it. So that was our first dinner after getting married. And had the 2 glorious days in Everett. And then I got my motorcycle. And you've seen that picture, that Super Hawk. Super Hawk was a week after I got married, and that was the day I got it. And
What year was that, Bill?
well, it was late '67 I got married, so it was early '68. And I only had the thing for a couple of weeks, and it snowed down in Everett. And any ever ridden a motorcycle in the snow? It's treacherous. It really is. And I was the only motorcycle out in the snow in Everett for, about a week and a half or 2 weeks. Drove it actually up to Anacortes in the snow. And got so cold that I had to slide my hands off the handlebars. Just couldn't open my hands. We were headed up to Anacortes one time. Beth was on the back, and stopped in Arlington to warm up, and somebody said, oh, there's a dance over here in Sylvania. And we went over to the dance, and they wouldn't let Beth in because she wasn't wearing a skirt. Pissed her off so much, she insisted we go back to Everett. She put on a skirt, rode side saddle down there. We went to this dance, lamest dance I ever been to. But, she's stubborn that way. That's one of the things I liked about her. But we were together for 2.5 years, and it was glorious. She kept me in college. She kept me in line so that I got my education. I kept her in line too. She put in a quarter down at Berkeley, and she was about to flunk out. She was a straight A student before. She almost flunked out because she got involved in all this other stuff. She was in Oakland for Stop the Draft, and she was the first one they pulled off the door because she was the only girl in front of the door, and they just grabbed her by the hair and brought her down the stairs. 30-something years later, I actually saw it on TV. Gee, there's Beth getting dragged down the stairs. She called me up and told me about it. It pissed me off so much I burned my draft card, and then she called again, and I told her, I said, I'm headed down, I'm hitchhiking down. She said, well, you burned your draft card, you can't come down here. They're just snagging people off the streets. They don't have a draft card, they go straight into jail. So I didn't go down, I should have. Yeah. But Anyway, if we hadn't gotten married, I probably would have gone to the San Francisco Art Institute. My grandmother was gonna finance that. All I had to do was, get an apartment and stuff. Had everything I needed in San Francisco packed into a trunk. And I was staying with Beth and her parents in Chico, California. And on her 18th birthday, the only thing her father said to her all day is, "Aren't you gonna put on some shoes for dinner?" Pissed her off. We go for a walk. She decides, well, I'll get back at them, I'll marry you. I won't go to Berkeley, So, went back, her mother got so mad, she tore up the street and burned her rubber, and we're left talking to her dad. And what was worked out is, you go home and try to get a job, and she'll go to Berkeley and see if she likes it. And then we'll see, coming up on Christmas, what you feel about the whole thing. Well, all the cannery jobs were done, the mills all were full of stuff, so I signed up to become a Boeing draftsman. That was my ticket to, all of that stuff. But that fell through. And I think I told you that when I graduated, top of the class, because of my great lettering, first in line for a job, the SST fell through the very day I graduated. So there were no jobs. We'd been putting on draftsmen for over a year, and suddenly there were no jobs. They were just, so I said, sorry. But they had told me also to shave my mustache. I'd have a better chance of getting a job without the mustache. I'd shaved it off to get married, and I liked my mustache. It kind of covered the scar in my upper lip, so I kind of liked my mustache. I went ahead and I shaved it off, and I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, do you want to work with people that are going to screw with your upper lip? No, I don't. Yeah, I'd rather not. But when I got home, my grandmother pulls out these drawings that I had never seen. Turns out my great-grandfather trained as a draftsman in Germany in 1868. This is 1968 that I'm doing this. But my great-grandfather had all these beautiful mechanical drawings. I suddenly knew how much work they were. And my mouth dropped open, and I finally said, Grandma, why didn't you even tell me about this? And she said, so matter of fact, I wanted to see if it was genetic. And I thought, pretty good test. But anyway, yeah, so had a great little marriage, but motorcycles were all through the thing. When I used to commute from North Beach, I'd catch the ferry, and of course, I'd zip across there, I'd run right on the ferry. I'd go upstairs into the wheelhouse to warm up. You can't smoke up there. As soon as we docked on the other side, I was back on the bike, and I had a route through Anacortes, only had one stop sign in there, everything was fast. And I'd get on the highway. As soon as I got on the highway, I'd pass everything in sight, and I'd go up on top of that little hill just before Sharp's Corner. I'd pull out a cigarette, and I'd smoke about a half a cigarette, and I'd watch all the cars that I'd passed go by. When the first car I passed, when it was the first car I passed went by, I would snuff out the cigarette, and I'd run down the hill, and I'd pass them all again. And when I got over, I'd take the back road to the college, and once you got off the bridge, going over the Skagit River, and you took that left, there's this long flat spot. Then it starts going up, and then flattens out for the railroad tracks, and then it goes up again. I'd kind of hang back if there was a car ahead of me. And I'd wait until they were getting right up there and slowing down so they could go over the flat spot and back up the hill. And I'd pass them in the air. Anything to make it a little more fun. And I used to love it when it rained, because I'd wear my grandfather's elk hunting outfit. All leather pants, leather jacket, one layer of leather that you could tuck into the pants. I had his leather U.S. Cavalry saddlebags I carried my books in over the back of the bike. And I had Jim Thomas's helmet, which was a little too big for me, so I'd wear my aviator's cap inside the thing with the goggles. And when it would rain, I'd put on the aviator's cap, and I'd wrap my scarf across my face, then pull down my goggles, then put on the helmet, and then strap up the helmet. And I had to be holding my breath, because the instant I breathed into this little scarf across my face, it would fog up my glasses, my goggles. So I'd have to get moving, and then they wouldn't fog up. So I'm holding my breath until I get moving. But when I got out on the road, and it was raining, the scarf would get wet, and breathing into it, it was like wetsuit. It was actually more comfortable than just riding with your face flopping around out the breeze. And I passed a cop one time. He was going a little too slow. I should have known. I learned a long time ago, you don't pass cops. They don't like it. But I went ripping past him. He pulls me over and he said, "You didn't signal." I said, "Look, I got two hands on two handlebars, and I don't have any blinkers, and you want me to stick my arm waving out in the wind at 70 miles an hour?" I said, "You're crazy. You let me go." One of the few times I got to let go. Most of the time they just give me a ticket or something. But had a lot of fun on motorcycles, but when I sold the Super Hawk, I was living in Mount Vernon, a half mile from the college, and it had been a miserable winter, and two things happened. One was the weather got really good all of a sudden, and the other was Easy Rider came to town. And I saw Easy Rider, and Beth didn't go and see it with me. And if she had, my life would have turned out a lot different. Because I had told her before we got married, someday might come along, and I just sell everything and buy a motorcycle and just go. And I hope you'll come with me. And that's where I was kind of headed after seeing Easy Rider. Suddenly I'm buying Easy Rider magazines and Chopper and Big Bike, and I'm looking at all these things. I'm designing one that's the way I want it. I even went down to Marysville. I heard that they had Harley hardtail frames down there, and I wanted to build it from the ground up. So I was headed down there for a frame. I pull up, and there's a guy who's got a Harley hardtail frame right over his shoulder, and he's walking out. And I run in there, and I said, "I want one of those too." And he said, "That's one." Just like when I hitchhiked to San Francisco in my wheelchair. Partly to see a friend of mine in Berkeley, partly to buy a leather jacket, because I had heard they had bomber jackets in Chinatown. And so I spend the night sleeping in a garage in San Francisco, so I'm up early and I go up Grant Street, pushing along, dipping into every Chinese shop there, because every one of them is peopled by some pretty Chinese girl, asking where the leather shop is. 4 or 5 of them told me. I kept dipping in there, having a great time. I finally get up to where I got to turn down to the leather shop, and I mean turn down. I didn't want to, but I went down this thing, and I had to clamp on the binders to stop at the shop because it's still on the hill. I go in there, I said, "I hear you got bomber jackets." I said, "I'm sorry, the last one went out the door 20 minutes ago." If I had not stopped at every one of them, I would have gotten that bomber jacket. So I went ahead and I bought one like John Wayne had in Flying Tigers. Leather collar and everything. Later stolen from me by some guy I took in. My buddy Danny actually crossed paths with him in Marysville. Danny was hitchhiking north, this guy was hitchhiking south, wearing my jacket, had my dad's Marine Corps knife sticking out from underneath it. Yeah, jerk. But anyway, where was I? What were we talking about? I'm having a senior moment here.
San
More Beth stories about being married.
Oh, about being married. Oh, being married was great. When we, after a little over 2 months in Everett, we had 3 weeks rent paid up, and we moved out. I hated Everett. The place not only stunk, it was like back in the 50s or something. They had not hipped up yet, and I just didn't like it down there. So we moved up into my grandparents' cabin on North Beach. And the first time I tried to cook in our marriage, I was going to do spaghetti. I got in the car, we talked about one bay leaf in there. I pull out this box of bay leaves, and I figured they'd been in there since the 30s. So I threw in 6 or 7 of them. And I never cooked again in the whole entire marriage. It was a bless him, really, I would never cook. When Hal Peterson and I were camped on, at the resort, the little park there, Young Park, this was in the summer of '65. Hal had bought the cushion from us, and I had my Honda 160, and we had my grandfather's two-man tent with the dance floor and 2 cots, and Hal did the cooking and I did the cleaning. And it worked out really nice. First time I lived away from home. Hal and I both had enough jobs between, mowing jobs between the two of us, and we were kept pretty busy. And we made pretty good money in the summertime doing all of this kind of stuff. But, Guimas Island and motorcycles are just kind of intertwined for me. My friend Steve Dunn I was telling you about, that same Super Hawk that the deer kept jumping out and hitting because of its pipes. He rolled it going down Eden Road, I think it was, and took out the signpost right where you start peeling down the flats on West Beach. I think he took it out with his rib cage. Poor Steve. One time we were riding up on Cap Santa, and he came around a corner, and he had a Ducati. This 125 I was telling you, it doesn't lean over quite as much, a little too wide. And I was right behind him, and he didn't make the turn, because it kind of turned back a little bit. I watched him go up a great big fir tree that was all covered in ivy. I mean, go up at an angle like this, and then fly through the air with his wheels 6 feet off the ground. I mean, he was literally airborne. He straightened up in the air, he came down, bam, and just about left the road and straightened out. And he had like a 10 or 15 foot piece of ivy hanging off of his foot. And he went up to the top of the hill and he stopped at the stop sign. When I pulled up there, he was just laughing hysterically. I said, "What the hell are you laughing at?" He said, "I'm alive." And that's kind of the way it is with motorcycles sometimes. So, you got something?
Yeah, well, you guys and your motorcycles and us girls and our horses didn't mix well. And we'd have to jump in the ditches to keep our horses in control. Steve was the only one who would turn his motor off and coast by. The only gentleman on the island.
Well, Steve Orsini had a Vespa, cutest little Italian, right?
It was a Pranfa. It was made in Germany.
Oh, really? I always thought it was a Vespa.
No, it was a Pranfa, yeah.
That was like one of the
It was-
first motorcycles I was ever on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It didn't go all that fast, and it wasn't all that big. Yeah.
I've only been sailing twice in my life, and Steve took me on my first sailing trip. The second one, though, Steve, was in Honolulu Bay with a full moon at night, and it was a sailboat race. These little dories. My girlfriend's name was Dory, and she knew how to handle this thing. And we went out, and somebody floundered right around the first buoy or something. And we were behind the lead. He made it around the last buoy, and he was going back, and he got tangled up with this other boat that was stalled at the first buoy. And these two were kind of floundering and stuff. I said, "We got enough room, go up the middle." And we went up the middle. If we had touched either boats, we would have been disqualified. But she jerked the sail in right at the last minute, and I'll bet we only had 4 inches clearance on either side as we zipped between these two boats and won the race. So that was the second time I went sailing. That was pretty cool. That was pretty cool. But I thought about marrying her. I broke my neck on her 17th birthday. She came back years later, and we spent 3 summers together, including here in Guimas. And she told me that I was her gift from God. It happened on her birthday. But I did end up getting married again, 30 years later, to a gal named Andrea. I met her, she showed me her engagement ring. And I said, "Oh, shoot, I want to take naked pictures of you." And she said, "Oh, that would be great." She had been a model. And she said, "Oh, that would be great." And so next thing you know, I'm taking naked pictures of her. And sometime during that, I think I fell in love with her. And so about 3 days later, her fiance kind of got caught wind of this stuff and kicked her out of the house that she had paid the rent on. So within 3 days, she was living with me. And 3 weeks later, I said, I love you, and she said it back, and I said, will you marry me? And she said, yes. And so next day, we went to Mount Vernon. Matter of fact, we got picked up by the Good Earth, Mark Caputo's wife in the van, took us over to Mount Vernon, got the license. 3 days later, we got married at my 30th class reunion. And here's a picture of me and her that night. I looked like the rich old coot, and she looked like the blonde gold digger. Platinum blonde hair, legs up to here. Yikes. She was a trophy wife. My friend Larry Muller, my best friend Larry Muller during my junior high school years, was a Superior Court judge, and he had told me that marrying people was the funnest thing he did as a judge. So I got to let Larry perform the services in the middle of our 30th class reunion. Unfortunately, he and his brother picked the dumbest song I ever heard for our first dance together. You've lost that love and feeling by the Righteous Brothers? Are you kidding me? If I'd picked something, it would be Want to Get You Into My Life, a Beatles song, but done by Earth, Wind, and Fire. I think that was a superior version. But after the wedding, we were a little tipsy and stuff, so instead of getting a ride home, she pushed me all the way up to 27th Street from the Eagles.
Bill,
Where we got married.
we're coming up on 8:25, so you
Okay, so,
Uh-oh.
oh, well, and I got.
close to the last ferry.
Yeah, 8:25, yeah, I gotta get out of here, I guess. So I'm gonna let you kind of wrap all of this stuff up.
We'll take care of it.
And is that picture of Andrea going around there?
Yeah, it is.
Did I get those other ones back?
They're in the back.
Okay. But what I wanted to finish with is, I don't know if you guys believe in astrology, but Beth's birthday was just 2 days ago. She was born on September 8th, 1949. Andrea was born on September 8th, 1965. So about the time I was falling in love with Beth, Andrea was being born. So,
We gotta make a movie of your life, man. There's just no two ways about it, except nobody would believe it.
yeah.
That's the only problem.
Perhaps the next talk will be hitchhiking, hills, and headaches.
Thank you, Bill.
You've been a lovely audience.